What's really good? What's really good? What's really good? Welcome back to another episode of the Sanchez Show. As always, I'm your host, Eric Sanchez, aka Legend in Two Games. This is the pregame NBA Finals Game 4 with the Sanchez Show. I want to thank all the supporters. I see all the questions and comments. We're going to get to those in a moment. Make sure you are subscribed to the Sanchez Show. Make sure you are following me across all social media platforms. You see the handle right there at the bottom, Legend in Two Games. Excuse me. Also, make sure you are supporting and following Real Fans Real Talk. We will be back live on Monday at 7:30, 8 o'clock. I'll figure out. I'll get with Trip Young. Shout out to my brother Trip Young. He might be joining us later tonight. But Monday, we will be getting together. Hopefully, we'll have some NBA to discuss. Feels like the series might be over, but we still got some stuff to get into. We got some things to discuss. We got some questions and comments to get to. But make sure, again, you're following Real Fans Real Talk because Monday night we will be back with a weekly recap as well as wherever we stand with the finals. Will the Celtics be champions at that point? Will the Mavs find a way to win one game and force it back to Boston? We'll find out tonight. So, yeah, Game 3, we did the pregame show before Game 3. There were a couple of things we highlighted. One of the main areas that I talked about was three-point shooting, which I feel like continues to be the biggest difference between these two teams. Boston continues to win the three-point battle and win it significantly, as they did in Game 1, where they were a plus 27. Game 2, they were a plus 12. Game 3, they were a plus 24. But also, it just feels like Dallas can't sustain any type of momentum. They had the 13-point lead. Boston came right back and closed that gap. Dallas goes on a 20-2 run in the fourth quarter. Then Boston goes on a more run to put the game away. It just seems like anytime Dallas gets momentum going, Boston can put them away. But let's get to the questions tonight. Shout out to Terrence. He was the first one in the comment section tonight. So that's what we're starting off. And this is a good one. I got a big question. Is Scott Foster on the game tonight? He's usually here to keep series alive. LOL. That's a great question and statement. And he is the lead official for Game 4, which means we'll probably see a lot of ticky-tack fouls early, which means we'll see a parade of free throws for Luka specifically, and maybe it will help Dallas. I mean, I don't know if Scott Foster himself can help Dallas because, again, the three-point shooting from Boston in this series has just been overwhelming if you're the Dallas Mavs. They've got to find a way to defend the three ball better. They just can't defend it better. They haven't shot the three ball well either, but maybe Scott Foster can help and force Game 5 back. Shout out to Pooh. Something that Pooh said the other day was she was like, "Oh, this is looking like a 4-1 series." It still has the makings of possibly being that. And as I mentioned to Trip Young, two things can be right there. Pooh could be right that it's a 4-1 series, and Kyrie could be right that we're coming back to Boston for Game 5. Dallas wins tonight. They do get back. They're not in the series though, but they do get back. So let's see how that plays out. Terrence also wants to know, looks like Porzingis is playing tonight. Do you expect much? I don't. Just a solid 10 minutes. I agree. I don't think Joe Mazzulla pushes Porzingis beyond a 10 to 15-minute mark. Even before the injury, he was only playing in the low 20s. I think Game 1, I mentioned 26 minutes. Game 2, he played 23 minutes. So I don't expect him to get into that same range again. 10 to 15 minutes. And really, it's only if Boston needs him. I don't think they need him. I don't think you have to play him. One of the things Tripp and I spoke about before Game 3 was, the need to force Porzingis to play. I thought being up 2-0, Boston didn't have to force that, didn't have to push that envelope. They could allow him to just rest up and see if he can get him ready for Game 5 or even Game 6. That's the luxury of being up 2-0, now 3-0 in a series. You have time. Porzingis may be out there just as a formality and then maybe get a few minutes to keep him loose, pause, but 10 minutes, 15 tops. I don't see anything more than that. And I don't see a significant impact because of how tough it will be to get going and then have to sit back down. Ron Charles, what does a final sweep do for Luka's legacy? I know he's young. Man, I hate that we're so quick to go to legacy talk. Again, there's a lot of NBA life in front of Luka unless injuries become a major part of his career. I don't think it does much whether he gets swept or not. I don't think it means much if they win tonight and then they lose in 5. Like, does that change the legacy talk if he lost in 5 instead of 4? I don't think it does. There have been other legends who have struggled in their first finals appearance. LeBron was swept in his first finals appearance. KD lost in 5 games in his first finals appearance. So there have been recent legends who have struggled in their first finals appearance as a team. Obviously, his performance alone has been solid, but team-wise, I don't think it affects his legacy. Now, if he stinks up the joint tonight, we'll probably remember it and say, wow, he really shit the bed to end the series off. But I don't think it hurts his legacy in a way that we'll look back and be like, oh, he wasn't the player we thought. I think he is who we thought he was. I think he is who we thought he was going into the series. And my response to that run again would be, does his legacy look different if they lose in 5 as opposed to 4? Does that change anything? If Luka has a great game tonight and they still get swept, and let's say Luka for the series averages damn near 30 points a game, does that affect his legacy? I don't think it does. It's a lot of basketball life in front of Luka. I think he will be fine. I don't think it'll change much. Shout out to Kyrie, even though Kyrie throwing a jab at me right here, but I respect it because I appreciate your support. Game 4, Mavs versus Celtics. Who y'all got? I love listening to Eric find some way for Mavs to win. LOL. You just won't say Celtics are way better. LOL. Damn. Now, take a sip of that. Now, Kyrie, though, I got to correct you. My preseason pick was the Celtics to get to the finals. Me and Will Gordon debated that. Will Gordon liked Milwaukee. I always said Boston. I love their continuity. I thought Drew Holiday could be a major addition for them, along with Porzingis. These are all things that are documented and are in the archives. You can go back and check. I had the Celtics as the better team going into the series. I've said that. I thought the Celtics were a better team. I thought they were the deeper team. I thought what could give the Mavs a chance and why I liked the Mavs was I felt they had the best player in the series, which is Luka, and I thought they had the better coach. Now, I've been wrong about the better coach. I think Luka is the best player in the series. I think Jason Kidd has been completely outcoached. What I've done is not to say that the Mavs or that the Celtics aren't better. All I've highlighted is that throughout this series, there have been points, if you're a Dallas Mavericks fan, enthusiast, whatever, supporter, if you're on a team, there are things you can look at and say, hey, look, we've had success with certain things, and now we've got to find a way to expand that success. I don't think I've been wrong in anything I've said. Game 1 was the biggest shock, I think, not only to myself, but to everybody. Because when I did the pregame, I don't think anyone thought Boston was going to blow the Mavs out in Game 1. But as I mentioned, I wouldn't have been surprised if Boston wins Game 1. But every other game has been pretty competitive. But the real difference in this series has been the three-point shooting. And I know just watching on the surface, you're like, oh, Boston looks more athletic and they got the better team. And you would be 1,000% correct. But every other area, Dallas is hung tough. Again, Game 1, Boston wins by 18. They were a plus 27 from three-point land. That's a major difference in the game. Like, you're talking a major swing in the series when you can outscore somebody that much from the three-point line. Rebounding in Game 1 was pretty even, 47 to 43. Boston had the advantage there. Assists were a big advantage for Boston. We've highlighted it. Dallas struggled with turnovers and assists in Game 1. Luka could not get any of the other shooters involved because Boston never had to help off anyone. Points in the paint in Game 1, Dallas 46 to 38. They were plus 8 there, and Boston had a 1-point advantage from the free throw line. So as I mentioned, and again, from what I mentioned, rebounds were pretty even. Points in the paint was Dallas. Free throw was even. The biggest difference was Boston plus 27 from the three-point line. Game 2, Boston wins by 7, right? Boston was a plus 3 from the free throw line, plus 12 from 3. Again, in a close game, plus 12 is a major difference. Rebounding 43 to 41 in favor of Dallas. Assists was 29-21 in favor of Boston. Points in the paint. Again, Dallas was a plus 8. A plus 8 in the paint. For as great as Porzingis has looked in the paint, Dallas has had the opportunities there. And that's the point that I continue to make. They have been able to get into the paint. They just haven't been able to shoot the 3-ball well. Game 3, Boston wins by 7. But Boston is a plus 24 from the three-point line. Rebounding went to Dallas, 43 to 36. Assists went to Boston, 26-15. Better ball movement, better incorporation of all your pieces, where it seems like Dallas is playing a lot of isolation ball. Obviously, Kyrie and Luka, a lot of isolation ball, but you see the difference in the assists in all 3 games, as I mentioned. Points in the paint. Dallas wins that 52 to 36. That's a plus 12, and Dallas was a plus 1 from the free throw line. So in all 3 games, as I mentioned, Dallas has won the paint, The free throws have been pretty even. The rebounding has gone to Dallas. The assists have gone to Boston, and the three-point shooting has gone to Boston. For the series, that has been the biggest difference. Again, you're talking Dallas, game one, shooting 25% from three, 23%, and then 36%. Boston, 28, 25, 39%. The three-point line has been the biggest difference. Dallas hasn't made more than 9 threes in any game, even though they were the number 2 three-point shooting team coming into the finals. Boston, on the other hand, 16, 10, and 17 three-pointers made. They are killing Dallas from the three-point line. So to your point, Kyrie, I'm not saying that the Celtics aren't better. I just don't believe they're way better. The difference has been the three-point shooting. That has been the difference. Dallas has to do a better job of guarding it. Dallas has to do a better job of shooting the three. But with all that being said, Boston is still up 3-0. And unless something drastically changes over tonight and the rest of the series, it's only a matter of time before this is over. Boston has killed them from the three-point line. Again, plus 27, plus 12, plus 24. Those are big-time numbers to try to overcome in any series. But I appreciate you, Kyrie. I appreciate that. Kyrie also wants to know, is it time for Luka to take his craft serious? In terms of, let's be real, he's fat and out of shape. No one want to say it. No, I think people have said it. And I think also we got to remember that this is who he is. Yes, he's got to take it more seriously. Yes, he's got to figure out a way to get into better NBA shape. His style is very methodical, but in order to make a playoff run, I think you do have to be in better shape. With that being said, the Joker isn't the most fit person either. And the Joker yet finds a way to get it done and got it done last year. Before he got it done, we all wondered if the Joker could be in the best physical shape to go on a deep playoff run and win the NBA Finals. So I think Luka needs to take it more serious, but these are narratives that get creative when you're not winning. No one was worried about Luka's weight and how he looked physically through the first 3 rounds because he was performing and they were winning. Now that they're not winning, we're finding narratives and we're finding reasons why the Dallas Mavericks cannot be successful. And I don't think him being fat or not in the best shape is the difference. He's still playing well offensively. He never was a defensive stalwart. So I don't think that was going to affect it. I think ultimately if his teammates were playing better and he was getting better support, they would probably be more in this series. But they're not. They're down 3-0, right? Better shape, yes. But I don't think that's the determining factor in why they're down 3-0 in this series. Again, make sure you guys are subscribed to the Sanchez Show. Make sure you are subscribed to Real Fans Real Talk. Real Fans Real Talk will be back Monday night. I'm hoping tonight the series isn't over. I'm hoping that we get at least a little bit more NBA because then we get into that downtime. And if the season ends tonight, I mean, we're about 3 months away from the start of NFL. Baseball season is a slow time. I know we'll talk Olympic basketball, but it's not quite the same, guys. I'm just hoping that Dallas can make it competitive. I'm hoping that they can at least put a little bit of a threat in Boston and force it back to Boston. And you know what? It wouldn't be a terrible thing if Boston were to win an NBA Finals in their home court. Not saying I want Boston to intentionally lose tonight, but it wouldn't be the worst thing. Kyrie McKnight also says, I've been listening to a lot of sports shows today. Tatum might go for 40 or 50 points to show up the finals. This is one of the narratives that was surrounding game 3. I think that ultimately Tatum going for 40 or even 50 isn't the best thing for what the Celtics do as a team. But if he has the opportunity to go for 30 plus, maybe even 40, I wouldn't be surprised if he chases it. Especially if they're winning by a significant amount, he may start to chuck up more threes and try to see if he can get to that 40 clip. But if you're Tatum, I don't subscribe to that thinking like a lot of people. I think you just shore things up right now and you just try to win the series and you let it land where it may land. Shout out to Justin. What's up, gang? So what's the difference between Marcus Smart and Jrue Holiday? It's a good question, Justin. I think the biggest difference is Jrue Holiday is a more efficient offensive player. I think there were times that Marcus Smart, though talented, may have felt that he was an equal to Tatum and Brown, and there were some offensive possessions where he kind of played hero ball, whereas Jrue Holiday understands his role perfectly and knows that, hey, this is what I need to do. I need to knock down a corner 3. I need to play great defense, and I just need to be available. Marcus Smart, to me, at times was chasing shots. Marcus Smart at times wanted to prove that he was the equal to the 2 stars of the team. Drew Holiday's just a better fit. Also, Drew Holiday is a guy who knows how to win. He's already an NBA champion, and no disrespect to Marcus Smart, but that's something he had never accomplished. So I think that's the biggest two differences between them. Rich Dre, shout out to Rich Dre. Why do fans and media do weird shit to put divide between Tatum and Brown? They teammates, not enemies. I 1000% agree. 1000% agree. And this is one of the things that Trip Young and I have gone back and forth on. This is why I don't like the narrative of, Brown was Eastern Conference Finals MVP and Tatum's got to do more. This has happened for several seasons with this team. And I think the media has tried to find a way to create drama in that locker room. And before, the narrative was, can you win with these two guys? If you guys remember, for years, it was, can you win? Should they separate them? Should they trade Brown? Should Brown have his own team? Who's better? Then when they made the finals 2 years ago, that narrative stopped because it proved that you could win and you could get to the finals with these two guys. Now that they're back in the finals, now it's, who's the real alpha? Whose team is it? Is Tatum as good as Brown? Is Brown as good as Tatum? Just stop. At the end of the day, they're on the cusp of winning their first NBA finals together. They've been in 2 of the last 3 NBA finals. They've been to 6 Eastern Conference finals together. I don't think this is a real narrative. I think this is all a media creation for headlines, for clicks, for people to tune in. And it's unfortunate, but we see it in a lot of sports. We've seen it other times. Like I mentioned, we saw it with KD and Russ when they wanted to know who's the alpha there. We saw it early on with Braun and Wade. The media will try to find the headlines and the narratives to push to create interest. And sometimes it's some corny shit. So I agree with you, Rich Drake. Let's see what else we got. Lakers are reportedly meeting with JJ Redick this weekend. This got LeBron James all in his hire, written all over it. Then they worked out Bronny. My poor Lakers, shake my head. Yeah, I'm not a fan of the JJ Redick hire just because I know that this is a direct correlation and a direct kind of reaction to what Braun wants. So I don't like it at all. I'm not. I've already said, as far as Bronny, I think that is silly for any team to even think about using a first-round pick on Bronny. I probably wouldn't even use a second-round pick. I think he should be. I view him. I should say. I don't think he should be anything. I view him as an undrafted free agent. I view him as somebody that I think you can just sign after the draft. You can get him on a 2-way contract, though I know he said he doesn't want to do that. But he's also got to be realistic about his options if he is not drafted, especially in the first round. And I think you develop him. I think he's a guy that's going to need a little bit developing. And there's nothing wrong with that. He's 18, 19 by the time the season starts. So the fact that he's not a finished product or a NBA player right now at 19, there's nothing wrong with that. Unfortunately, the name will give him more attention and the name will put him in positions that I don't think he's ready for. But in terms of JJ Redick, I don't like it. If I'm JJ Redick, I don't know why I would want the job. As I've said many a times, if I'm taking a Laker job, I need assurances from Rob Pelinka that this is at least a 3-year investment and a 3-year build, not just, hey, Braun wants to win this year, let's try to go all in this season. I also think for JJ Redick, this is a very tough situation to be in. You're Braun's guy. You're on the podcast with him. You take that hire, how do you expect the rest of the locker room to respect you? Braun has your ear already. You guys have separate and private conversations. You're going to cater to Braun at times. You're going to run an offense that is centered around what LeBron James wants to do. And if I'm one of those other guys in that locker room, why should I respect any of your coaching, any of your adjustments? Because I know these are all extensions of what LeBron James wants. So it's a very, very tough situation. I don't think the Laker job is as appealing as many people think. It's one of the other things I've highlighted recently, because if you're a veteran head coach, I would not want LeBron's shadow and his constant undermining to get in the way of me doing my job. If I'm a first-time head coach, I don't want to be attached to this, because we've seen other first-time head coaches, how it ends for them. We saw it for Darvin Ham. We saw it for David Blatt in Cleveland. We saw it for Luke Walton in LA. It doesn't end well if you're not Braun's guy. Even Frank Vogel, who won a championship, it does not end well for you if you are Braun's guy. You will always be the scapegoat. You will never get the credit. You will never be viewed by your peers as an elite head coach. The only head coach Braun ever played for that's been viewed as an elite head coach is Eric Spoelstra. And I think that respect came after Braun left. When Braun left Miami and people got to see the job that Spoelstra has done with the Heat year in, year out, and making sure that they're competitive no matter what or who's on that roster. That's when the respect for Spoelstra started to come in. But when Braun was there, Spoelstra and his coaching were completely overshadowed by LeBron James. Every other coach has gone through that, and I just don't understand why you would want to be a part of that. I just don't know if JJ Redick maybe views things or thinks this plays out differently. I don't see that. Will Gordon, shout out, bro. I see you. Appreciate you. Rich Dre also wants to know. So outside of Kyrie and Luka, because both can get 30, but they still can lose. So who needs to step up? The easiest answer is PJ Washington. PJ Washington was really good in round 2 and round 3. He has not been that good this series. I know Derrick Jones has struggled, but it's a combination of those two. Probably PJ Washington. You need him to be able to knock down 2 to 3 corner threes. I don't like the pace of play. I would like to see Dallas push the ball a little bit more, and get some easier buckets. Everything seems to be very slow and methodical and centered around Luka in a half court, and that makes it easier for Boston to set up their defense. Whereas on the flip side, Boston has done a great job, I think, of pushing tempo, getting shots early in the shot clock, forcing Dallas defense to scramble around and try to match up. But yeah, outside of those two, I would say PJ. PJ's got to step up. I thought Gafford has looked well the last 2 games. He looked better. They're not getting the lobs at the rim as frequently, but I think a lot of that has to do with they're letting Boston set up their defense. You got to get up and down the court. So PJ Washington would be my answer to that, Rich Trey. Again, shout out to Will Gordon. I see you, bro. Kyrie Thompson. This Boston team is the best team I've seen since the 2018 Warriors. Boston, unless someone makes major moves, can be in the finals again. Yeah, I agree. Well, again, we're talking about Boston being in 6 of the last 7 Eastern Conference finals. So they've been in the mix. They've been in the mix every year. Obviously, this is their second finals in the last 3 years. Just playing devil's advocate. Just playing devil's advocate, Kyrie. So I don't want you to think that I don't agree with you in terms of how good Boston is. We said the same thing about Denver last year. We thought Denver had all the makings of a team that could consistently be in the mix for a championship, and I think Denver will be in the mix. They've got arguably the best player in the league. But I think styles make fights. And Boston, I'm not knocking anything about their path. They did exactly what they were supposed to do. They were the number 1 seed, and they handled business along the way. I just wonder what their path or what type of adversity they would have faced if they had a little tougher road. But again, that's not playing the what if game. That's not playing the, they played this competition. No, they played whoever was in front of them, and they handled their business. Moving forward, like you said, unless someone makes major moves, can be in the finals again. They can be. But also your path to the finals can get a little tougher because no one saw Minnesota being the matchup nightmare that they became for Denver prior to that playoff series. Once we saw it on the court and we realized, wait a minute, they have the makings of a team that could give you some trouble, then it changed all the dynamics there. So that's the only thing I will say. But I think Boston will be in the mix for years to come. Outside of Holiday and Horford, everyone else is pretty young. I think Derek White has played really well for them the 2.5 seasons he's been there. You expect Tatum and Brown to still be all-star and all-NBA type talents for the next few years. Boston is going to be in the mix for a very, very long time. They've got a young core. They got a good nucleus. They've got, I think, a really good GM in Brad Stevens who knows how to build a team. They're going to be in the mix. So it would not surprise me if Boston, again, is deep in the playoffs. Again, 6 of the last 7 years, they've been in the Eastern Conference Finals. Denver and Boston, shout out to Kyrie again, would have been an amazing series. Nuggets just need an extra lung. I'm sure they will add a few players. I'm not sure what you mean by extra lung, but maybe you meant extra big. I don't know. Pause. But it would have been an amazing series. I think there's still time. The Nuggets thing is interesting because throughout this season, as you guys know, when we talked about it on Real Fans Real Talk, one of the questions that kept coming up was, do they really miss Jeff Green and Bruce Brown? And then come playoff time, we realized they weren't as deep of a team, and they struggled a little bit. Now, again, playing devil's advocate, Denver was up 20 points in Game 7 against Minnesota. And if Denver finds a way to handle their business there, then we're talking about a completely different playoff for the playoffs. Because I think Denver would have beat Dallas and we would have got Denver and Boston. But we didn't. Denver does need to add a little bit of depth on their bench. Boston, it will be interesting to see what happens with Horford. Drew Holiday, I expect to be back next year, but it'll be interesting to see what pieces they make on the margins around their core guys to keep this thing going. Because I think Boston has done a great job of adding to this team. The addition of Porzingis and Holiday were amazing. And now can they add another? Could they add possibly a guard off the bench? Peyton Pritchard isn't the real guy you want there. We know that. As your backup point guard. Can they add a backup point guard? One of the most surprising things for me about Boston, and maybe this is why I wasn't sure how the series would play out. For years, Boston's late game execution was shaky. That's always been a knock on them. You know, they could get a lead on you, but they would struggle in those last 5 to 6 minutes to hold the lead because they would get into these really bad offensive sets and bad ISO sets. And this year they seem, and maybe this is the impact of Holiday and to a certain extent White, they've just been much better closing out games. We saw it in Game 2. We saw it the other night in Game 3 after Dallas goes on a 20-2 run. They have been much better. And that's the growth of this Boston team. That's something that I had not seen yet. And that was one of the things I questioned. Like, if they're challenged, how will they respond? They responded great. So in terms of adding future, probably just a guard off the bench. But other than that, they're in great shape. Kyrie, I'm going to get to your boxing question a little later, but I like that question as well. You know, I'm a big fan of the sport of boxing. Will Gordon says, game plan is flawed. Kyrie needs to be the primary ball handler, pause, and Luka needs to play off the ball. That can work. However, I think the length of some of the defenders they've thrown at Kyrie has given him trouble. And maybe that's why Kidd has been hesitant to go that route. Now, Will Gordon, you and I, we talked about, we texted during the game the other night. Jason Kidd has really been outcoached, especially the last 2 games. Game 1, you're getting blown out. Luka tries to shoot you back into it, but you still end up losing by 18. It wasn't going to be much to take away from the coaching of Game 1. But Game 2 and Game 3, when those games were more competitive and there were opportunities for Dallas, you could really see the difference in the coaching. Joe Mazzulla has outcoached Jason Kidd in this series. And Jason Kidd has been left to kind of scramble. He's tried to go to zone at times, which I really didn't understand going to zone. But they have not, he has not coached well. Maybe you go that route. I do think, though, when they've thrown Tatum or Brown on Kyrie, the length of those defenders have given Kyrie a lot of trouble. And maybe that's why Kidd has been hesitant to go with him as the primary ball handler. I would like to see them push the tempo a little bit more. That would be me personally. Get up the court, try to get us some easier shots, especially for Derrick Jones Jr. and for PJ Washington. Get them up, get them going a little earlier. But at this point, it just seems like not much they've done is work. They jumped out to a quick lead in Game 3, and they quickly gave that away. Maybe we see more of Kyrie as a primary ball handler. But Kyrie also didn't play well the first 2 games, Will. So let's not forget that either. Like, you know, Kyrie played well in Game 3, but he really shit the bed the first 2 games, and he left Luka out there to dry in those first 2. So they need him to play better. If he's playing better, maybe you go with him as a primary. Let's see. Oh, Kyrie Thompson, extra young. Yeah, they had no bench. They needed Bruce Brown back. They had a few more players. Yeah. I wasn't sure what it said long, but yeah, extra young. I think they need quality veterans off their bench. Maybe they try to go get a Bruce Brown back. Reggie Jackson, I'm okay with Reggie Jackson. I just don't like how much of the bench offense ran through him. I thought that's probably something that you'll see Mike Malone adjust moving forward. But Denver's in great shape. You know, 1 quality veteran, maybe even 2 quality veterans off that bench, and they're right back to it. They'll be fine. This one was also from Kyrie. Eric, it's crazy. Last series it showed debating that Kyrie and Luka are the best backcourt of all time. LOL. Yeah, that was a little wild. I think some shows jumped out the window. I think what they probably were really hinting at was like most skilled, which you can make that debate. You know, they are one of the most skilled backcourts of all time in terms of both those guys being able to get their own offense going and score in so many different ways. Best backcourt of all time is a reach, especially since they had not won anything together and haven't won anything together. So to immediately say they're the best backcourt of all time is definitely a reach. But most skilled, you can make that debate. You could make the debate that there haven't been two guys this skilled in the backcourt at the same time. But again, this is what a lot of these sports shows do. This is what a lot of these media content creators do. It becomes clickbait. It becomes, let me get you engaged with this conversation. And shout out, I want to shout out my man Combos Court. He brought up a great point. Shout out, if you guys aren't already, subscribe to Combos Court. I've had him on the show in the past. One of the really, really good basketball minds you're going to find in this content creation space. But he made the statement that a lot of times when you see these shorts, these reels, these posts, there will be intentional misinformation put out there just to get you to click on it and then get you to comment on why that person who's speaking is so wrong, because it's our human nature to want to correct someone. And I think that's what happens a lot of times with all these sports debate shows. It's the reason why it was early, I believe Stray mentioned it, about the divide between Tatum and Brown. We know, if you're watching the games, if you're a fan of the sport, we know that they're teammates. If one's having an off night, it is the job of the other to pick them up. There shouldn't be a divide there. Yet the sports shows will run with that divide and say, well, such and such is better. It should be his team. He's the alpha. They do that because they want you to click on it. They want you to comment on it. They want you to get infuriated by the statement and try to correct them on their wrongs. They know they're wrong because that's not how the game works. You can't have it both ways, right? You can't say when a guy is struggling or when a guy's team is struggling, you can't say, oh, he needs more help. Then when he gets more help, say, oh, well, now he wasn't the alpha in that game. It was that guy was the alpha. So that's what they do on purpose, man. Shout out to Kyrie again. Will Gordon. The only way to push tempo is Kyrie bringing it up. Luka's too slow, and his size pause is more effective coming off pin downs and screens. I don't know why. So I don't know why they haven't tried to use Luka more at the elbow and at the free throw line. I don't that part I haven't understood, especially when they've gone with smaller defenders on Luka. It's been too much Luka starting at the three-point line, having to work very hard to get his shots. One of the things I noticed in game 3, and I'm sure you guys noticed it as well, Luka was hitting the front rim on a lot of his shots in that fourth quarter. The legs were gone because he had to work so hard for 3 quarters to get his shots. I would love to see, if you're going to have Kyrie as the primary ball handler, get it to Luka on the elbow or at the free throw line and then let him go to work there, because that one-legged turnaround works just as effectively there with less dribbling. And Will Gordon, I know you're going to love this, with less wasted movement. You don't have to work as hard to get your shot off from there if you're catching it at the elbow and then turn it into, or getting into a quick action that leads to a floater or a jumper just inside the paint or just outside the paint, as opposed to starting from the three-point line, over dribbling, getting to that spot, having to work through contact, and then having to finish. That a lot of wasted motion there. And I know how Will Gordon feels about the wasted motion. Let's see what else we got. Ron. So you're not ready for USA men's team. I'm looking forward to it. I am looking forward to it, but I don't know. I really enjoy the NBA playoffs. And not to say that Team USA won't be exciting. Once we get to the medal round, I think everyone's excitement will ramp up a little bit more. But in those early qualifiers, I don't see anybody who's going to give Team USA a problem. I expect us to be playing deep in the middle round, and it doesn't have the same significance. Once we get the middle round in a single nation, yeah, there'll be a little bit more excitement. But again, those are kind of one-offs. Those are one games. I would like to see a little bit more NBA basketball before we just transition, because the summer's long. It's a lot of baseball talk, and it's mostly baseball training. Was very training. I'm not even gonna lie. As a Mets fan, it's a terrible time to be wanting to talk baseball. I know we'll be back with the Friday Night Lives as we get close to football season. Shout out to Will Gordon. We'll be bringing Vernon Brownlee back on as well for some of the gambling talk. So I'm excited for that. But I just don't want the NBA season to end. Maybe I'm selfish. I would like to see just a little bit more basketball. I hope Luka and Kyrie can find a way to extend the series. Just at least give us another game or two. Make it interesting. I don't want to sweep, but if it is, it is. What can I say? Again, make sure you guys are subscribed to the Sanchez Show, streaming across all major platforms. Make sure you guys are following me across all social media platforms. You see the handle right there, Legend in 2 Games across everything. Make sure you subscribe to Real Fans Real Talk. I know most of you guys are, but if you aren't, make sure you subscribe over there. We'll be back Monday with a weekly recap. We'll see. Maybe the series is over. Maybe we're getting ready to talk about Game 5. We'll see where it goes. Maybe something interesting happens tonight, and then we get into that. What else we got? It's a slow news week, right? Yeah. Game 4 tonight. Drop your predictions in the comment section. Guys, let me know what you expect to happen. Do you think the Celtics end it off tonight? Do you think Dallas can stay alive for one more night? Was Kyrie right? Will they get back to Boston for Game 5? Even if it's 3-1, will they get back for Game 5? Also, let me know. I saw the comment. I mentioned it a minute ago. Aaron said Mavs by 1. It's right now. Right now, I saw the line was Boston favored by 1. Earlier today, it was Mavs favored. I don't understand why the Mavs were still favored going into today. I understand they're at home, but I don't know why they were still getting favored in that game today. So yeah, I don't understand. But Terrence said Mavs by 1. Scott Foster, right? Let's see what happens with Scott Foster. There was a question about who else needs to step up for the Mavs. Y'all let me know what y'all think. Who y'all think needs to step up? Who needs to be an X factor tonight? So let's see how that plays out. Maybe Scott Foster is a bigger impact on the game, right? Like I said, Scott Foster will help him win. Football talk. We'll go to where in the world. Well, he's on his dark retreat. Well, that's the part they want to put out there. He's doing shrooms in a cave on his dark retreat as he gets ready for the season. It's crazy that the NFL allows that. That they know he's using an illicit substance, and he's talked about it openly and plans his offseason around that because he told the Jets 2 months ago about this quote unquote vacation, but the NFL allows it. Rich Dre says Boston wins. I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of leaning towards Boston tonight. I'm not gonna lie. I think it's gonna be the highest scoring game of the series. The over under today, when I looked at the lines, was 211.5. I took the over because I am expecting it to be probably the best game Dallas plays in terms of shooting the 3-ball. But I think Boston's going to shoot the lights out tonight as well. I expect it to be a high-scoring game. I expect it to be a lot of free throws tonight. I don't know if you guys saw that clip, though. The other day, they had the open practice. None of the Mavs players showed up, which was, I guess a telltale sign. I don't know. You guys let me know what we should make of that, because you're down 3-0 after the type of loss they had, and Luka's apologizing to teammates, and Luka's getting killed by Brian Windhorst, which I didn't agree with that either. We'll get to that in a second, the Brian Windhorst comments about Luka. But for the players not to show up for the open practice and the open shoot around, I just don't get that. Excuse me, are you quitting on the season? Are you saying this is 1, 2, 3 Cancun? Like, why aren't guys getting shots up? I don't understand that. So yeah, in terms of Brian Windhorst, let me know your comments, questions on that. If y'all saw the statement he made, this is why I don't like the statement by Brian Windhorst. This goes back to what we just talked about. I believe it was Kyrie Thompson who mentioned it as well, about the media creating these narratives, right? Kyrie Thompson, we talked about the Kyrie and Luka backcourt thing. We've known for a long time that Luka is not a defensive stalwart. He's not one of them guys. He's not a lockdown defender. He's never been a lockdown defender. He's never going to be a lockdown defender. But now that they're down 3-0 and he fouls out of a game, now it becomes, oh, Luka's defensive effort is why the Mavs aren't going to be champions this year. That's not correct. The Boston Celtics were the better team to start the series. The Boston Celtics have played like the better team throughout the series. And when Luka was playing well and the rest of his teammates weren't playing well, it didn't matter how bad Luka was defensively. He was getting no help. Going into game 3, Luka was the only person on his team that made more than 1 3-pointer throughout the series, right? Now that they lose game 3, and Luka has obviously a bad defensive performance as well because he fouls out of that game. Now the narrative becomes, oh, Luka's got to be a better defensive player to elevate them. I don't agree with that. Luka didn't have to be a better defensive player in the Western Conference Finals to get here. And that new stat that they love to create, the blow-by percentage. The blow-by percentage was over 50% in the last series. Whenever the T-Wolves attacked them in the last series, they got to the basket and got whatever shot they wanted. So now that's the reason why Boston's beating them. It wasn't the reason before. Luka's always been who he is defensively. That's not going to change. That's why the Mavs brought in defensive guys like Gafford, like Jones, like PJ Washington to make up for his shortcomings as a defensive player. They're not living and die by Luka as a defensive player. That's a bullshit narrative. Excuse me. That's a bullshit narrative. But again, that's what the media will try to do when they run out of things to talk about. Luka's defense is not why the Mavs are here in the finals, and Luka's defense was not going to be the reason they were going to win the finals if they were going to win the finals. It was going to be their ability to shoot and get every ball. Luka was going to have to be Luka, but he needed his shooters to be his shooters. They didn't have that. So it doesn't matter how bad he's been defensively. Rich Dre, I just seen that 98 Bulls Jazz when MJ hits the game winner over Russell is the most watched game ever, 35.9 million. How is that game not surprised after all these years? So I have one main reason why I think, but I wonder, is that number based off of total views, like including YouTube, including replays, including NBA Hardwood Classics? Because if it is, we got to remember that's, in most people's eyes, Michael Jordan's last game, right? Most people will overlook the 2 seasons he spent with the Wiz, and they will say that 98 Bulls win is his last real game. It's one of the most iconic moments in sports because it caps off the back-to-back three-peats. In that moment, when you hear Bob Costa say, I remember watching that live. I remember watching it live, and I remember what Bob Costa said, and to this day, I'll never forget. When he says that that's the last shot that we ever see Michael Jordan take, what a way to end a career. And Michael Jordan hitting that shot to cap off that three-peat is the equivalent of, hitting a walk-off home run to end your career in the World Series. It's the equivalent of a quarterback throwing 4 touchdowns in the Super Bowl and then retiring. Imagine Tom Brady had thrown 4 touchdowns in the Super Bowl and then retired right after. That would probably be the most rewatched game in NFL history because to most people, Tom Brady's considered the GOAT of quarterbacks. So I think that's why. I also think The Last Dance played a big part in that as well, because for those that maybe were too young at the time or maybe just don't remember that moment, seeing the background details around that series and around that three-peat encourage people, I think, to go back and watch it. But it is, you could debate. Will Gordon, let me know, because maybe we should do this show, most iconic sports moments. Will Gordon and I have done our fair share of top 10s and best of, and we've done movies, we've done music. Maybe we should do that one, Will. Most iconic sports moments of the last 40 years. Because I think that sequence, not just the shot, that sequence, they're down 3. Mike gets the quick layup, then gets the strip of Karl Malone, sets up the shot for the win, and they get the back-to-back repeats. So just my thoughts on it. Appreciate it, Rich Ray. I like that. I like that one a lot. Will Gordon, when Brian Windhorst talks, I change the channel. He's only on TV because of his relationship covering LeBron since high school. He knows nothing about the true nuances of the sport. I agree with a lot of that, Will. For those that don't know, Brian Windhorst really made his career by building a relationship with LeBron when he covered him at St. Vincent St. Mary's. ESPN, it is well documented, hired Brian Windhorst solely because of his relationship. At the time, I think Brian Windhorst was covering college sports for the Cleveland Plain Dealer. And that was a major jump to go from local high school reporter, which he was, local high school reporter, to ESPN affiliate and covering the NBA. And then when LeBron went to Miami, Windhorst, and this was the time that people remember when ESPN used to have the ESPN New York, ESPN Texas, ESPN LA, they had an ESPN Miami. Windhorst was assigned specifically to ESPN Miami and the Miami Heat, again, because of his relationship with Braun. So that is a great point, Will. I'm not the biggest fan of Windhorst because I think I don't feel he brings anything different than any other analyst. I don't think he brings much at all, aside from his relationships. But the relationship to Braun specifically is what got him to that platform, because I don't think there's been anyone else who went from local high school reporter to ESPN. That was the jump he made. He wasn't covering a college team. He wasn't a freelance guy for the NBA team. He was a local high school reporter that made the jump to ESPN. Kyrie says, did anyone see that viral clip of Stephen A walking in the game? And it was almost like he wanted people to show him love, but they didn't. It was funny. Yeah, I saw that. It was corny. Sometimes Stephen A, I have a lot of respect for Stephen A. And I always say this, Stephen A, I think, has really changed the way we view sports, personalities, analysts, how you want to describe it. He's changed that, because a lot of people weren't talking basketball the way Stephen A does. But Stephen A also has gotten to a point where he thinks he is bigger than the game, and he thinks he is the show. He thinks he's more important than what we're really doing. He does that quite often. I've seen him do that at Knicks games. I've seen him do it at Knicks games, but he was walking as if people were there to him. So yeah, but I saw it. Let's see. Question. Hold on. I'm not sure why it's not on the screen. 35.9 is TV viewers for that game, and number 2 is Game 6, Suns Bulls 93. That's the John Pax game with 32.1. This isn't YouTube actual numbers when these games happen. Well, all right. So we're going by that. Keep in mind, Rich, that the way we consume sports and watch sports at that time was completely different. Is actual game. Number 2 is Game 6. So keep in mind, the way we consume sports, the way we watch, completely different. You didn't know restrictions. You had that was you had to watch. You get to different ways, whether it's legal, so we had to sit around and watch it. At the time, the Bulls were must-see TV, and they were chasing history. You know, the first peat, which is that 93 team that you mentioned, that was the first repeat. The Celtics. The second repeat, obviously, was Mike winning 6 championships in 8 years, but there was also the aura around, this is it, Mike is going to retire. And I haven't seen the last answer that year. That's all reporters wanted to talk about. Right? It's all they wanted to talk about. Is this it? Is this it? Is this it? Is this the last dance? So there was that aspect of it. I remember as a kid watching both those. I remember specifically the 98 team not wanting to believe that it was over for Mike. And this is coming from a Knicks fan, a tortured Knicks fan, who Mike has killed his whole career and has some of his most iconic moments against my team. But I remember feeling like I didn't want this to end, because I knew in that moment that I was watching something, like I was just watching greatness. Were we having the talks about legacy and Mount Rushmores and all that? No, we really weren't in 98. We were really appreciating who Mike was at the time. And even in 98, I felt Mike was the greatest basketball player that I know I had ever seen. In 98, as a young teenager, I wasn't experienced enough to debate him against anybody else, but I knew he was the greatest player I had ever seen. I knew that for a fact. So I think that plays into it as well. 93 was that first three-peat since the Celtics of the 60s. 98 was potentially the end of an era. So we knew what that was. Will Gordon said all Stephen A did was walk. I don't get the criticism. He's supposed to come in with his head down and tail between his legs. He's at the top of his profession. He gets a pass from me. No, I don't think he's supposed to come in and be shy the way he walked in. But he came in with the walk, the way we see the players come through the tunnel. And he's pointing at people on the side saying, what's up? You know, it was a different swag to it. Like I said, I'm not knocking Stephen A. I got a lot of respect for Stephen A. But I've also seen in person where Stephen A will carry it like, y'all here to see me, as opposed to like, nah, we're actually at a sporting event. You know, you're consuming this and enjoying it the way we are. A couple more questions before we wrap up. Again, make sure you guys are subscribed to the Sanchez Show, streaming across all major platforms. Make sure you follow me across all social media platforms as well. You see the handle right there at the bottom. Subscribe to Real Fans Real Talk and my brother Trip Young. Make sure you guys tune in Monday night. Hopefully, we're preparing for Game 5. But if not, we're going to have a weekly recap. You know how we give it up. Pause. It's going to be a great show on Monday. We'll go. And this one was for you. Terrence want to know how much Kyrie's going to go for. What do you say in your comment? He said he goes for about 28, but need about 12 helpers from him. Okay. Stephen A was tipping when he was walking. He put an extra tip. Yeah, he did. You know, some of that is the New York swag. Some of that was just Stephen A being Stephen A. We're going to get ready to wrap up in a few minutes, but I didn't forget there was one last question for Kyrie. I saved it for the end. If any of you guys are boxing fans, feel free to comment. Let me know what y'all think. So Kyrie wants to know, Gervonta Davis versus Frank Martin, who you got? So stylistically, I think there's a good fight. I think Frank Martin is a solid fighter, but Gervonta Davis is Tank Davis. Tank is going to beat him. I think Tank stops him in the later rounds. I'm gonna call a 9th round stoppage in this one. Tank is such a great fighter, such a skilled and high IQ fighter. Too often people get caught up in his power and the flashy knockouts. But what people don't see when you watch the fight is he does process the information so quickly that he sets up things for the later rounds. And it's why he has so much success knocking guys out as the fight goes on. He's not a one-trick pony. He doesn't go in there overly aggressive and trying to get you up out of there in the first round. He will fill you out, pause for the first 2, maybe even 3 rounds. And once he develops something, he will attack it. He will expose weaknesses. My only concern for Tank Davis is I don't know if it will be ring rust, but I wonder if instead of 2 or 3 rounds, it may take him about 5 rounds to get going. He has not fought in over a year. Keep in mind, his last fight was the Ryan Garcia in April of last year. So there might be an extended of warming up and getting everything back together and getting the timing down. But he's a far more experienced fighter than Frank Martin, and I think that will show in the later rounds. One of the quotes that Floyd Mayweather used to always say, and Tank has a dollar as well, is, I'm going to take you into deep waters and drown you. And that phrase really means I'm going to take you into that second half of the fight where I know you're not comfortable, and I'm going to expose some of your flaws. I expect the same thing. It's going to be a great card, though, Kyrie, because I also like David Benavidez in the co-main event to win and win impressively. I know he's making his debut at light heavyweight, but he's always been a big super middleweight anyway, so I don't think the weight will be an issue for him. I expect him to be impressive in that light heavyweight debut, which will lead to more talk about him and Canelo. So I got Tank by knockout. I got Benavidez by knockout. I'm going to check what that ticket would look like to put them together, both winning by knockout. Will said, I'm going Tank all day. I'm from Maryland. No technical analysis needed. I feel you. Yeah, Tank is a special fighter, man. And I tell people all the time, the power is what wows people, but the IQ, man, the IQ is top notch with Tank. You see it in the ring. You see him dissecting his opponent round by round. And he will, if you're going to be the aggressor, he will allow you to be the aggressor. Look back against Rolly Romero. Look back against Ryan Garcia. He'll allow you to be the aggressor just so he can figure out what punches are you looking to land. Whatever it is that you're banking on landing that you think is going to hurt Tank, he's going to figure that out and he's going to counter that. That's why you see the short left hand knocked out Romero. You see the short left hand knock down Garcia early in the fight. And then when Garcia got worried about the left hand, the body shot is what ultimately put him away. Tank is a special fighter. And that's why I say Frank Martin, this might be above your class. I don't think you're this experienced yet. The only concern I would have is Tank hasn't fought in 14 months. So his first 3, maybe even 4 rounds may look a little iffy from Tank because he might be trying to get his rhythm back down. But from the 4th round, 5th round on, I think he takes over. I think he stops him in the 9th round. That's my prediction. Guys, enjoy the games tonight. As I mentioned, I'm hoping Dallas wins, but I do think Boston ends it tonight. Maybe Scott Forster helps out the Mavs, as we've highlighted in the comments section. Again, Monday night, we're back. Trip Young and myself. Probably going to be an 8 p.m. start, but I'll have Trip let you guys know. Make sure you follow me across all social media platforms. If we get a game 5, I'll do a pregame for game 5. If not, I'll see you guys Monday, and we'll figure it out from there. With that being said, I am Eric Sanchez. This is the Sanchez Show. Guys, enjoy game 4. Enjoy your weekend. Happy Father's Day out there to all the fathers. Happy Father's Day, my brother. I'll talk to y'all later, man. Have a good one.